few lives have appeared as polished and perfect as Audrey Hepburn's from the outside. She was grace personified, elegant, refined, effortlessly stylish, a symbol of a new kind of feminine beauty that the world had never quite seen before. But behind the glamour and the iconic roles was a woman shaped by profound loss, repeated heartbreak, and a childhood scarred by war. Her story was not one of fairy tale beginnings. It was one of survival, reinvention, and an enduring search for the love and stability she had been denied from the very start. Audrey Kathleen Rustin was born in Brussels on May 4, 1929, into a world that seemed, on the surface, comfortable and cultured. Her early years were defined by constant movement. Her family relocated between London, Arnhem, and beyond, following her father's work. By the time she was still a child, she could speak 6 languages fluently, a gift born from that restless, nomadic lifestyle. But beneath the privileged exterior was a far darker reality. Both of her parents were outspoken supporters of the Nazi regime. They did not merely sympathize from afar. They traveled to Germany, attended rallies, and openly aligned themselves with fascist ideology. Then, in 1935, the family fractured. Her father, Joseph, became so consumed by his political convictions that he walked out entirely, relocating to London and leaving Audrey and her mother behind. That moment would stay with Audrey for the rest of her life. She would later describe his abandonment as the single most traumatic experience she ever endured. The emotional wound only deepened when she was sent to boarding school in Kent. While other children reunited with their families during holidays, Audrey remained behind, waiting for a father who had the right to visit, but simply chose not to. Then, just as she was beginning to make sense of that loss, the world itself collapsed around her. When World War II broke out, her parents believed the Netherlands would be safer. In 1939, her father took her to the airport. She watched him walk away, with no reason to think it would be the last time she would see him for years. She believed she was heading towards safety. Instead, she was heading straight into danger. Survival under occupation. At first, the Netherlands offered the illusion of refuge. But in 1940, when Audrey was just 10 years old, German forces invaded. Almost overnight, the country transformed into occupied territory. Soldiers and the SS imposed a suffocating presence that crushed any sense of security. What had begun as an escape became a trap. To avoid drawing attention as an English girl, Audrey adopted a Dutch name, Etta van Heemstra. But even with that disguise, survival was a daily struggle. She and her family often hid in dark cellars as gunfire echoed through the streets above. Life became a constant state of tension where every decision carried risk, and every day brought fresh fear alongside fragile, increasingly desperate hope. In 1942, the war struck her family directly. 2 of her uncles were arrested, taken hostage, and executed. It was a breaking point. Up until then, Audrey had tried to remain invisible, believing silence was her best chance at survival. But after that loss, something shifted inside her. She chose to act. She quietly became involved in the Dutch resistance, delivering underground newspapers and carrying messages for Allied forces, sometimes hiding them inside her shoes. It was calculated, dangerous work for someone so young, and she did it without hesitation. In a remarkable twist, she also used her lifelong love of dance as part of that resistance effort. Before the war, Audrey had dreamed of becoming a ballerina. Now, that same passion became a tool for survival and defiance. She performed at secret underground concerts designed to raise money for the resistance cause. These were nothing like a traditional stage performance. When she finished dancing, there was no applause. The audience remained completely silent, smiling in quiet appreciation, because even a single sound could have exposed them all. It was art forced to exist under absolute pressure, beauty born in absolute silence. By 1944, circumstances had reached a desperate new low. A brutal famine swept through the Netherlands during one of the coldest winters on record. German blockades cut off food supplies and starvation became widespread. Audrey's family, like many others, resorted to eating tulip bulbs just to survive. Her health deteriorated quickly. Malnutrition, anemia, and respiratory illness took their toll. The grand homes and comfortable life she had once known disappeared entirely. Everything was reduced to the raw business of staying alive, the road to stardom. When the war finally ended, the shift felt almost unreal. One of Audrey's most vivid memories from that period was receiving a chocolate bar from a UNICEF worker, a small gesture that, to her, marked the return of life itself. She didn't waste the relief or the possibility it carried. Determined to reclaim her dream of dance, she moved to London and earned a scholarship to train at Ballet Rambert. But reality quickly caught up with her. The years lost to the war could not be recovered. Other dancers were far ahead, and her weakened body struggled to keep pace. Eventually, she was forced to accept a painful truth. She would never become a prima ballerina. It was a devastating realization. She had held on to that dream through war, hunger, and grief. Now, in peacetime, it slipped away, but Audrey did not stop moving. Instead, she adapted, turning to acting not out of passion at first, but out of practical necessity. Acting provided income, stability, and occasionally a chance to dance in musical roles. It was a pragmatic decision that quietly became the beginning of something extraordinary. Her first serious romance during this period was with industrialist James Hansen. Their relationship seemed promising, even leading to an engagement in 1952. But as the wedding approached, Audrey began to question everything. She called it off publicly, explaining that she wanted a marriage she could fully commit to. Beneath that statement was a deeper truth. She knew their lives were heading in different directions, and she was not willing to compromise her future. The career breakthrough came in 1953 when she was spotted while filming Monte Carlo Baby at a hotel. Writer Colette approached her without hesitation and offered her the lead role in Gigi on Broadway. Almost simultaneously, director William Wyler was searching for a lead actress for Roman Holiday. After watching her screen test, he was convinced. Even though established stars like Elizabeth Taylor were under consideration, Wyler chose Audrey, recognizing something authentic, charm, vulnerability, a quality that felt genuinely new. Her co-star Gregory Peck was so certain of her future that he insisted she receive equal billing in the film, despite being an unknown. When Roman Holiday was released, audiences responded immediately. Almost overnight, she became the symbol of a new kind of elegance, refined yet natural, glamorous yet relatable. By 1954, she had won the Academy Award for Best Actress, and just 3 days later, a Tony Award for her stage work in Undine. It was a feat almost without parallel. Love, loss, and the search for stability. Success did not quiet the turbulence in her personal life. On the set of Sabrina, she found herself caught between two of Hollywood's biggest names. Humphrey Bogart, who had wanted his wife Lauren Bacall to play the role, treated Audrey with cold resentment. William Holden, however, felt deeply in love with her. Their connection grew into a full affair. Holden eventually proposed, but Audrey turned him down. More than anything, she wanted a family, and Holden, who had undergone a vasectomy, could not give her that future. It was a line she could not cross. She found a different kind of partnership in actor Mel Ferrer, introduced to her by Gregory Peck. They shared intelligence, cultural depth, and a love of storytelling. By September 1954, they were married in a quiet Swiss ceremony. But the journey toward the family she so desperately wanted proved agonizing. A miscarriage in 1955, followed by another in 1959 after she was thrown from a horse during filming, suffering a broken back while pregnant, left her emotionally and physically devastated. In 1960, she finally welcomed her son, Sean Hepburn Ferrer. The moment felt like a long-awaited victory, and she stepped away from acting for a full year to be fully present as a mother. Her return in 1961 brought her most iconic role, Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Author Truman Capote had envisioned Marilyn Monroe in the part and was openly critical when Audrey was cast. The pressure was immense, and Audrey, naturally reserved, found it deeply challenging to inhabit so free-spirited a character. Yet the performance became legendary. The little black dress, the elegant updo, the quiet moment outside Tiffany's window. Together they defined a new standard of style that continues to influence fashion today. Throughout it all, her creative partnership with designer Hubert de Givenchy provided a consistent anchor. What they built together was not merely a wardrobe, but an identity, elegant, understated, and entirely her own. Her marriage to Ferrer, however, grew increasingly strained. Over 14 years, his influence over her career became controlling, and what had once felt like support gradually curdled into frustration. The marriage ended in divorce, followed by speculation about temper, dominance, and infidelity on both sides. By the late 1960s, at the height of her fame, Audrey made a decision that surprised nearly everyone. She walked away from Hollywood entirely, choosing to give her son the kind of stable childhood she had never had. Not long after, she met Italian psychiatrist Andrea Ditti on a Mediterranean cruise. Their connection was immediate and romantic. Within 6 months, they were married. She moved to Rome, imagining a quieter life as a devoted wife and mother. But the dream unraveled. Ditti proved repeatedly unfaithful, and the paparazzi made private life nearly impossible. Eventually, that marriage too came to an end. Finding peace and purpose after another painful divorce, Audrey retreated to a quiet farmhouse in Switzerland called La Paisible, the peaceful place, and there at last she began to find the life she had always wanted. She turned down major roles and protected her personal space fiercely. Then, at a charity auction, she met Robert Wolders, a Dutch actor who had recently lost his wife. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally, from a polite refusal of his first invitation to a phone call the next day, to long conversations and daily connection. He became her partner, her companion, and, in her eyes, her husband, though they never formally married. Their bond was built on shared values, mutual respect, and a love of simplicity. For over a decade, it held steady, real, calm, and entirely free of drama. And then a new chapter opened. Invited to a UNICEF concert by a cousin, Audrey found herself standing on stage, sharing deeply personal memories of wartime hunger and fear. A senior UNICEF official in the audience approached her afterward with a proposal: become a full-time Goodwill ambassador. She accepted without hesitation. For the rest of her life, she traveled to struggling communities around the world, not as a celebrity making appearances, but as a woman who understood suffering firsthand. The work became more than humanitarian effort. It became a form of healing. During this period, she also finally located her father, tracked down through the Red Cross, living in Dublin since the day he had sent her away in 1939. The reunion was nothing like she had hoped. He met her with distance and indifference, offering little warmth or reconciliation. Yet despite everything, his abandonment, his political past, his coldness, Audrey chose forgiveness. She supported him financially for the rest of his life, even as the emotional wound he had left never fully healed. The final chapter. In 1992, after returning from a humanitarian mission in Somalia, Audrey began experiencing severe abdominal pain. Further testing in Los Angeles revealed a rare and aggressive cancer, pseudomyxoma peritoneum, that had already advanced beyond the reach of surgery. The diagnosis was terminal. She received the news with quiet composure, meeting it with the same calm strength she had carried through every hardship that came before. Her final wish was to return home to Switzerland. She was too fragile for ordinary travel, and it was her longtime friend Hubert de Givenchy who made it possible, arranging a private jet and ensuring the journey was carefully managed from beginning to end. She arrived home and spent her final Christmas surrounded by the people she loved most, giving each of the 3 men closest to her a winter coat as a quiet, warm, lasting farewell. Her partner Robert Wolders, her son Sean, and Givenchy himself. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on January 20th, 1993. The response was immediate and deeply emotional. Tributes poured in from around the world, remembering not only the film icon, but the humanitarian who had used her voice and her platform for something far greater than fame. A small, intimate funeral was held at a local church in Switzerland. Gregory Peck read one of her favorite poems. Her former husbands, her sons, and her closest friends stood together in grief, a gathering that reflected the full, complicated, deeply human arc of her life. What Audrey Hepburn left behind was not simply a filmography or a fashion legacy. It was proof that beauty and grace could coexist with profound pain, that a person shaped by war and abandonment could still choose compassion over bitterness, and that peace, real, quiet, lasting peace, was worth searching for no matter how long the road.